The alien streets were loud and crowded, filled with all kinds of creatures. Vendors shouted, machines buzzed, and the air smelled of smoke and strange spices. But in the middle of it all, a small voice cried out, trembling with fear, "Please, someone help. My mom won't wake up." The little alien girl shouted. She was no older than 6, with green-tinted skin, big silver eyes, and thin arms that trembled as she held her mother's hand. The woman beside her was lying on the ground, not moving, not breathing properly. But everyone kept walking. Some glanced for a second, then looked away. Others pretended not to hear. A group of aliens passed by, laughing. One said, "That's what happens to their kind," and moved on without. A second thought, even those of her own species didn't stop. The girl cried louder, her voice breaking, "Please, please, she's dying." But the market just moved on like nothing had happened. That was when Jack heard her. He had just arrived on Varkos that morning. A human traveler in a world that rarely welcomed his kind. He wore an old jacket, had a small bag slung over his shoulder, and a few credits in his pocket. But what made him stop wasn't money or politics, it was the sound of a child in pain. He pushed through the crowd and knelt down beside her. The girl looked up at him with wide eyes wet with tears. "Is this your mom?" he asked gently. She nodded quickly. "She won't wake up." Jack checked her pulse. Faint. Very faint. He looked at her skin. Was pale, almost blue. She was barely breathing. His heart sank. But he didn't show fear, not in front of the girl. "We need to get her help now," he said. The girl gripped his sleeve, her tiny fingers shaking. "Will you help us?" "I will," Jack said without hesitation. He lifted the mother carefully into his arms, her body light as feathers. The girl followed, clutching his leg as they made their way through the crowd. People stared. Some even laughed. "Look, the humans carrying trash," someone said cruelly. Jack ignored them. He found a human-run clinic at the edge of the market and rushed to the entrance. But 2 guards stepped in front of him. Blocking the door, "No aliens allowed." One guard said coldly. "She's dying," Jack replied firmly. "I don't care what species she is. Orders are orders." The second guard replied, crossing his arms. "Leave her outside if you want treatment." Jack's jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing. He looked down at the little girl, who was now hugging her mother's limp arm. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't leave her." Jack took a deep breath, turned, and stormed away from the guards. He knew another way. There was a storage building nearby, a small outpost for off-world medical cargo. Mostly empty these days. He kicked the lock and slipped inside. Closing the door behind them, the room was dusty but had basic supplies. Old medkits, 4 bags. Oxygen units, just enough to do something. Jack laid the woman on a table and began. Working fast, he cleaned her wounds, gave her oxygen, and injected a stim needle to stabilize her heart rate. The girl stood beside him the whole time, watching with wide eyes. "What's your name?" he asked softly as he worked. "Nari," she whispered. "And my mom is Sira." "All right, Nari, I need you to talk to her," Jack said. "Keep her with us, okay?" Nari nodded and leaned close to her mom's ear, whispering softly. Jack noticed tears on her cheeks, but also something else. Hope. Minutes passed like hours. Then suddenly, the monitor beeped softly. Her heart rate was climbing, slowly but surely. Jack let out a breath of relief. "She's stabilizing," he told Nari, smiling a little. The girl blinked in surprise, then smiled a tiny, broken smile that tried its best to be brave. But before they could breathe easy, a red light flashed in the corner of the room. Security breach alert. Jack had tripped a silent alarm. Footsteps echoed outside. Voices shouted, "He's in here." The guards had found them. Jack looked at the door, then at Nari. He picked her up with one arm and grabbed a med bag with the other. Then he looked At the unconscious Sarah, still too weak to move, he couldn't carry both. "No," Nari cried. "Don't leave her." "I won't," Jack said firmly. He strapped an old exobrace onto his back and carefully mounted Ciro across it. His knees bent under the weight. Okay. But he stood strong. He looked at Nari. "Hold on tight." She nodded and clung to his chest. As he burst through the back door, the guards shouted behind them, but Jack didn't stop. He was running now. Through alleyways, past stunned aliens, into the unknown, with a child in his arms and a dying mother on his back. Only one human had stopped hand. He was all they had. Jack ran through narrow alleys, the weight of the unconscious alien mother pressing hard on his back. Nari clung to him tightly, her small arms wrapped around his neck, tears still wet on her cheeks. Behind them, angry voices and fast footsteps echoed through the market. Guards were chasing them, shouting for backup. Jack turned a corner sharply and slipped into a dark storage tunnel. It was damp and smelled like old chemicals, but it gave them cover. He slowed his steps to breathe, heart pounding, muscles aching. "We're safe, for now," he whispered. Adjusting the straps that held Sierra to his back, Nari looked up at him, eyes full of trust and fear. "Will my mom be okay?" she asked in a soft voice. Jack didn't answer right away. Instead, he knelt down. Checked Sierra's pulse again. It was still weak, but steady. "I'm doing everything I can," he said gently. "We just need a place to treat her properly." They couldn't go back to the human clinics, and the alien ones wouldn't accept help from a human. Jack had one option left. A secret bunker hidden beneath the ruins of an old rebel outpost, a place he had once used during a war long forgotten. He led Nari down deeper into the underground tunnels, passing rusted pipes and broken lights. Eventually, they reached a metal door almost covered in vines and dust. Jack placed his hand on a scanner. Still worked, barely. The door creaked open with a loud hiss, revealing a small chamber filled with old crates, tools, and a single working light. "This is it," he said, stepping inside. He gently laid Sierra on a padded bench and placed a blanket over her. Then he pulled out a dusty medkit and started working. Nari watched closely, her hands folded tightly in front of her chest. "Do you know medicine?" she asked quietly. "I used to be a field medic. During the Earthbasterian conflict," Jack replied. "What's that?" "A war," he said simply. "A long, ugly war." Jack cleaned the wounds on Sierra's body, checking for infections or poisons. Her breathing was shallow, but there was a spark in her now. He connected a nutrient 4 into her arm and placed a small oxygen tube near her nose. Machines beeped softly as her vitals began to improve, bit by bit. "She's strong," Jack muttered. Impressed by how Sierra was holding on, Nari walked over. Brushing her mother's hair gently, "She always took care of me," she whispered. Even when we had nothing, Jack turned away for a moment, pretending to check the monitor, but in truth, he was holding back emotion. There was something about this child and her mother that pierced through his worn-out soul. He'd seen pain before, plenty of it, but this felt different. It felt like a test, and he couldn't walk away. Suddenly, a red light blinked on the panel. Jack frowned. Checking the scanner showed movement above ground. The guards were still searching, and drones were circling the area. He had to move fast. "I need to hide this place better," he said. "We're not safe yet." Nari helped him drag boxes and cover the door from the inside, making the room look abandoned. Then she returned to her mother's side, holding her hand again. Hours passed, and the sound of boots faded away above. In that time, Sierra's condition slowly improved. She opened her eyes for a brief second and looked at Jack, her lips barely moving. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I'm Jack," he answered, kneeling beside her. "Just someone who couldn't leave you behind." She gave a weak nod and passed out again. But her hand tightened slightly around Neris, Later that night, Jack cooked some dry rations he had stored. He gave Nari a small bowl of warm food, and she ate quickly but politely. "Thank you for saving us," she said quietly, looking at him with big eyes. "I didn't save anyone yet," Jack replied, "but I will." Then he asked her, "Why were you and your mom alone in the market?" Nari looked down, poking her food with a spoon. "My mom worked at a chemical plant," she said. "She got hurt and lost her job. They said she was useless now." Jack's jaw tightened. "No one is useless," he said firmly. "Not her, not you." Suddenly, a loud crack echoed outside, metal scraping against stone. Jack jumped up and checked the scanner again. A small drone had landed nearby, scanning for heat signatures. He grabbed a disruptor rifle from the crate and aimed it toward the vent shaft. He waited, heart steady, eyes sharp. After a few tense minutes, the drone drifted away. Jack let out a breath and lowered the weapon. "They're getting close," he said to himself. Nari looked scared. "Will they take us away?" Jack shook his head. "Not if I can help it," he said. "We're going to keep moving." He packed what he could, carefully carried Sierra again on his back. He gave Nari a flashlight and told her to stay close as they stepped into the shadows. Once more, Jack whispered, "This world turned its back on you. But I won't." And with that, the three of them vanished into the dark tunnel. Chased by silence, hunted by strangers, but carried forward by one man's promise. Jack moved carefully through the underground tunnels. Each step echoed softly in the dim path ahead. He carried Sierra on his back once again, while little Nari walked beside him, holding his hand tightly. Her small feet stumbled sometimes, but she never let go. Above them, the city of Varkos buzzed with lights and noise. But down here, it was cold and quiet. They were heading toward an old spaceport, Jack's backup plan. A place forgotten by most. It was dangerous, but it was their only chance to leave the planet. As they walked, Jack noticed how quiet Nari had become. "Doing okay, kid?" he asked, looking down at her. She nodded slowly. "I'm just scared," she whispered. "What if they catch us?" "They won't," Jack said, squeezing her hand. Gently, "I've been in tighter spots than this. You're not scared?" she asked. Jack paused for a second, then gave a small smile. "I'm always scared," he said. "That's how I know I'm still alive." They passed through a collapsed section of tunnel. Crawling over old pipes and wires, Jack moved with experience, guiding Nari across carefully and making sure Sierra's body didn't get bumped. Finally, they reached a rusted ladder that led up to the spaceport's lower hangars. "This is it," Jack whispered. He climbed up first, helping Nari behind him, and then gently pushed Sierra's body upward with one arm. The hatch opened into a quiet, dust-covered room full of crates and broken lights. No one was there for now. They rested behind some crates as Jack caught his breath. Nari looked around the empty hangar. "Is this where your ship is?" she asked. "Yes," Jack said. "Dock 47B, just ahead." But things weren't so simple. When Jack tried to unlock the gate to the docking bay, the screen flashed red. "Access restricted. Security override." He slammed his fist against the panel. "They've locked it down," he muttered. "They must know I'd come here." Nari's shoulders dropped. "We're trapped," she whispered. Jack turned around, eyes sharp but calm. "We're not trapped," he said. "We just need a new plan." He checked the schematics of the port on an old wrist console. There was another way in a service elevator that could bypass security, but it was on the other side of the terminal. They had to go through open ground. It was risky, but it was all they had. As they crept through broken corridors, Nari suddenly stopped. "There's something I want to tell you," she said quietly. Jack knelt down beside her. "What is it?" "My mom." "She's not just a worker," Nari said, glancing at Sierra's pale face. "She used to be a scientist, a good one. But they made her work in the factory after she tried to stop them." "Stop who?" Jack asked. now alert. "The people making poison," Nari whispered. "She said it was hurting other planets." Jack's eyes narrowed. This wasn't just about helping a sick mother anymore. If what Nari said was true, then Sierra might be holding dangerous knowledge, something powerful people didn't want getting out. "We need to get her off this planet," Jack muttered, more to himself than to her. He checked Sierra's pulse again, still weak, but stable. Then he pulled Nari close. "Whatever happens, stay behind me, all right?" She nodded, bravely, as they crossed into the open hangar. Jack's instincts screamed danger. A spotlight turned on. Blinding them for a moment, "There he is." A voice shouted, followed by the sound of boots hitting the floor. Guards began closing in from every direction. Weapons raised, Jack didn't waste a second. He threw a flash grenade and ducked behind a container with Nari. Sierra lay between them, protected. "Run if I tell you," he said to Nari. "No," she replied. "I won't leave you." Jack stared at her, then gave a tired smile. "You sound just like your mother." He fired a few warning shots and rolled toward the maintenance door. They squeezed through just before the guards could catch them. Inside the tunnel, the elevator shaft was still working. Jack hotwired the panel, and the door opened with a heavy clang. The elevator shook as it moved, slowly taking them toward the backup hangar. As they waited, Nari held her mom's hand and began humming softly. Jack listened, heart heavy. He had seen many broken people in his life, but the bond between this mother and child was something pure, something worth fighting for. When the elevator stopped, they found themselves in an old ship bay. Jack rushed to a small, battered shuttle hidden beneath a tarp. "This old bird still flies," he said with hope. He placed Sarah in the back seat, strapped her in, and handed Nari a seatbelt. Then he activated the console. "Nothing. Come on," he growled, hitting the panel again. Still nothing. But then Nari reached forward. "My mom always kept this with her," she said. Holding a small crystal key, Jack took it, inserted it into the portant. The engines roared to life. Jack laughed with disbelief. "Looks like your mom planned for everything." Just as the ship lifted, gunfire rained down from the platform. But it was too late. The shuttle shot into the sky, past the clouds toward space. Nari looked out the window as the stars came into view. Her voice was soft, but strong. "We made it." Jack looked at her and nodded. "We're not safe yet," he said, "but we're free." And somewhere in the back, Sierra stirred, her eyes fluttering open at last. The shuttle broke through Varco's atmosphere with a loud hum. Smoke trailed behind the engines. Warning lights blinked across the dashboard. Jack gritted his teeth, keeping both hands tight on the controls. "We're hit," he muttered. "Stabilizers." Failing, Nari held onto her seat with wide eyes. Looking back at her mother, Sierra was still weak, barely awake, her head rolling gently, with the shuttle shaking. Jack glanced at both of them, then made a sharp turn, aiming for the planet's lower forest zones. "There's no choice," he said. "We can't make orbit. We're going down." The ship groaned as it dropped lower, trees rushing up to meet them, with a crash and a spray of sparks. The shuttle tore through thick vines and branches before skidding to a halt. Silence fell, broken only by the sound of cooling metal and birds flying off in panic. They had landed in the middle of the Varcosian wildlands, a dangerous place few dared to enter. It was full of strange creatures, toxic plants, and rogue scavengers. Jack unstrapped himself and quickly checked on Nari and Sierra. "Everyone okay?" he asked. Nari nodded shakily. "My head hurts, but I'm fine." Sierra opened her eyes slowly, her voice weak. "Where are we?" Jack leaned closer. "We crash-landed, but you're safe, I promise." She stared at him for a moment, then gave a small, tired nod. Jack packed what supplies he could carry: medkits, water, rations, a small plasma knife, Then he turned to the others. "We can't stay here. There's too much risk. Can she walk?" he asked, looking at Sira. Sira tried to stand, but collapsed back onto the seat. "No," she said softly. "Not yet." Jack frowned, thinking fast. He spotted a broken piece of ship panel and turned it into a makeshift stretcher. He laid Sarah on it and used ropes to drag her behind him. Nari walked beside him, one hand holding his belt, her other holding her mother's hand. They moved slowly through the forest. Sunlight dripping through thick blue leaves above them, strange sounds echoed around them, chirps, growls, hissing noises in the distance. Nari looked up nervously. "Are there monsters here?" Jack gave a half smile. "Probably," he said, "but I've dealt with worse." After an hour of walking, they found a clearing beside a small stream. Jack set up a simple camp, placing Sira in the shade and giving her some water. He boiled food while Nari helped clean her mother's face with a soft cloth. As night fell, the jungle noises grew louder. Red eyes blinked from the trees, and low growls sent shivers down Nari's spine. Jack set up motion alarms and placed a glowing heat rock near Sarah to keep her warm. He sat by the fire with his weapon, ready, always watching. Nari curled up beside her mother, but she couldn't sleep. "Jack," she whispered. "Yeah." "Why are you helping us?" Jack didn't answer right away, staring into the fire. "Because someone once helped me," he said finally, "when I had nothing. One person believed I was worth saving." Nari sat quietly, thinking about his words. Then she asked, "Were you a soldier?" "Yes," Jack replied, "long ago. Before I gave it up, did you win?" Jack chuckled softly. "No one really wins in war." Suddenly, a sharp whistle cut through the night air. Jack jumped up, weapon raised. The bushes rustled on. 3 figures stepped out, their armor made of bones and metal, their eyes glowing. "Orange Outlanders," Jack whispered. "The tribal raiders of the wildlands, ruthless, silent, and hungry for tech or slaves." One of them pointed at Sarah and spoke in a rough voice. "Trade her or die." Nari screamed and ran to her mother. Holding her tightly, Jack stood between them, eyes cold. "You don't want to do this," he warned. The raiders laughed, but one of them hesitated. Noticing the way Jack stood balanced, steady, like a man who had killed before. "I'm not here to trade," Jack said, voice firm. "I'm here to protect them." Without warning, one raider lunged forward. Jack stepped aside and struck with the plasma knife, slicing through armor and dropping the attacker to the ground. The others paused, unsure. Jack didn't give them a second chance. He moved fast, silent. Brutal, his training from Earth's deadliest units coming back like instinct. In minutes, the threat was gone. The raiders either down or fleeing into the trees. Jack stood over them, breathing hard, his knife glowing. He looked back at Nari, who was shaking but unharmed. Sira had passed out from exhaustion, but she was alive. Jack knelt beside Nari and hugged her tightly. "You did great," he whispered. "I was so scared." She sobbed. "So was I," he admitted. They spent the rest of the night under guard, watching the shadows and holding on to the silence. At dawn, Sira finally woke up again, her voice stronger. "You saved us," she said, looking at Jack. "Just doing my job," he replied, smiling slightly. She reached out and touched his arm. "Thank you, human," she said. "I was ready to die, but now I want to live for her." Jack looked at Nari and nodded. "Then we better keep moving," he said, "because they'll come back. And next time, it'll be worse." And so, deeper into the wilds they went, with danger behind and mystery ahead, but together now, stronger than before. The forest grew darker the deeper they went. The trees were thicker, their trunks glowing faintly under the strange light of Varco's twin moons. Strange calls echoed from above. But Jack wasn't afraid of wild creatures anymore. He had seen what monsters wore uniforms and walked on 2 legs. Sira, still weak but no longer fading, now rode on Jack's back with her arms loosely around his shoulders. Nari walked beside them with her small hand holding his. Her eyes sharp and alert. Jack had grown used to the silence between them, the quiet trust they shared without needing to speak. They reached a hidden cliffside, where Jack remembered an old resistance hideout built into the rock long ago. He entered a code into a rusted panel, and after a moment, a metal door slid open with a deep hiss. Inside was a narrow hallway lit by flickering lights, old gear, and power tools scattered along the walls. "Not much," Jack said, "but safe for now." He laid Sira on a cot inside the main chamber and powered up the old systems. Soon warm air filled the room, and Jack handed both mother and daughter warm broth. As they sat together, a silence fell until Sira finally spoke. "You deserve to know the truth," she said, her voice low but steady. Jack looked up from where he was fixing a portable scanner. "Go on," he said. "I wasn't just a factory worker." Sira began. "Before that, I worked for the Varco's Genetics Initiative." Jack frowned. "Government work?" "Yes," she said, "but it was worse than that." She looked at Nari, then back at Jack. "We were creating weapons, living ones, bred in labs, designed to kill or survive on any planet. I didn't know at first. I thought I was helping. Design, cures, treatments, vaccines." Jack's face was unreadable. "But when I found out, it's fur, I tried to stop it," she said, her hands trembling slightly. "They silenced me, erased my records, and sent me to work as a cleaner in the same building. Then one day, I was told I was being let go. No warning, no payment, nothing." Jack leaned back, trying to take it all in. "That's why they want you dead," he said. "You're a loose end," Sira nodded. "But it's worse than that," she added. "They didn't just create monsters. They used my blood." Jack looked sharply at her. "What do you mean?" "They took samples from every scientist without our consent," she said. "I had a rare genetic marker. Something ancient, something they couldn't explain. They used it as a base, mixing it with other DNA to create a super-resistant organism." She pulled up her sleeve, revealing a small glowing scar. "This isn't a normal wound," she said. "It's where they injected something back into me, something experimental." Jack stood, now alert. "Is it dangerous?" Sira shook her head. "Not to me, but if someone harvested it, they could build entire armies from it. And now that I'm on the run, they'll want to take me alive or make sure I vanish." Nari sat quietly, watching both of them. Jack stared at the floor for a moment, then looked at Sira. "You should have told me earlier," he said. "We're in deeper than I thought. I was scared," she admitted. "And weak," Jack sighed, then activated the scanner he had been working on. "Your blood has a code sequence I've never seen," he muttered. "Part human, part something else." Sira nodded. "They never told me what the rest came from." Suddenly, an alarm beeped on the outer door. Motion sensor, something was outside. Jack grabbed his weapon and gestured for Nari to hide behind the cot. Sira tried to stand, but Jack placed a hand on her shoulder. "I've got this," he said. He moved to the outer door and checked the camera. A figure stood outside, a tall, being wrapped in a long coat. Helmet covering its face, not a soldier, not a raider. Jack activated the speaker. "State your name," he said. The figure responded in a calm voice. "I'm not here to fight," it said. "I'm here because the girl activated a beacon." Jack's eyes widened. Ari's eyes did too. "I didn't mean to," she said quickly. "Back in the bunker, I pressed a button. I thought it would help." Jack looked at the screen again. "You're from the Neutral Coalition," he said. Surprised, the figure nodded. "We monitored distress signals from endangered species and civilians when we saw the data burst from Sira's biocode. We came." Jack opened the door slightly, keeping his weapon up. "Prove you're not lying," he said. The figure stepped closer and removed the helmet, revealing a human face, scarred but kind. "My name is Commander Reeve," he said, "and I've seen what the Varkos Initiative does to people like her." Jack lowered his weapon slowly. Sierra stepped forward, standing with effort. "You'll protect us?" she asked. Reeve nodded. "More than that, we want to stop the ones chasing you." He looked at Jack. "But we need your help, soldier." Jack didn't answer right away. He looked at Nari, then at Sarah. He had only wanted to save one dying woman and her daughter, but now the galaxy was involved. He finally nodded. "All right," he said. "Let's finish what they started on our terms." The hidden shelter buzzed with quiet activity. Jack stood near a holotable with Commander Reeve, studying maps, marking routes, and setting traps outside. Clouds rolled across the sky, the wilds of Varkos whispering with wind and distant growls. But the real danger wasn't from the beasts in the jungle, it was coming from above. "They'll find us soon," Reeve said, pointing to a signal spike on the map. "They're sweeping every region with drones and scout teams. They'll send a strike team next," Jack replied. Eyes narrowed, heavily armed. Sarah sat nearby, still recovering, but now stronger than before. She held Nari close, her hand gently stroking her daughter's hair. Nari watched the two men plan with wide, quiet eyes. Reeve turned to Jack. "You know this place better than anyone. You fought here during the resistance." Jack nodded. "I know the terrain, the traps, the back tunnels. We'll fight here." Reeve raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" "We could evacuate Sarah and Nara, get them to orbit." Jack shook his head. "If we run, they'll chase us forever. We make our stand here," he said. "We finish it?" Reeve smiled faintly. "Then let's get to work," they began. Setting up defenses, Jack repaired broken turrets and laid explosive charges along the cliff path. Reeve activated old sensor drones and placed snipers in trees. Even Sierra insisted on helping, guiding them to build an electromagnetic shield around the shelter. "I may not be a soldier," she said, "but I know how to disrupt enemy tech." Nari, too, had her own role. Jack gave her a small communicator and taught her how to use the alarm codes. "Only if things go bad," he told her. "You press this, and you hide with your mom." "I'm not afraid," she whispered. Jack knelt in front of her. "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you keep going anyway." That night, the jungle fell quiet. Too quiet. Jack stood on the outer wall. Looking into the trees, he felt it before he saw. Its shadows moving in the distance. "They're here," he said into the calm. The first wave came fast, black-armored soldiers, silent, their rifles glowing red. They moved like shadows, but Jack was faster. He fired the first shot, knocking one down, then triggered the traps. Explosions rocked the forest edge, sending bodies flying. "Hold the line," Reeve shouted, directing the coalition soldiers. Turrets lit up, burning through the night air with beams of plasma. But more enemies kept coming, wave after wave. Inside the shelter, Sierra stayed near Nari, holding a pistol in one hand. She could hear the battle outside, booms, cries, and the sharp hum of energy weapons. Nari sat beside her, holding the communicator tightly. Outside, Jack fought like a machine. He moved through smoke and fire, taking down enemies with perfect precision. His coat was torn, blood on his cheek, but his eyes burned with focus. A new sound filled the air, a hype screech. From above, dropships descended, and with them came the elite, all armored beasts with shields and blades. Jack saw them land and cursed under his breath. They brought shock units. He muttered. Reeve ran to him. "We can't hold them much longer." Jack looked around, then pointed to a hill above the shelter. "We lure them there," he said. "There's a generator under that hill if we overload it. We'll blow the entire cliff atoll, bury them." Reeve hesitated. "That's risky." "I know," Jack said. "That's why I'll go." He sprinted through the fire. drawing enemy attention, leading them toward the hill. His body moved on instinct, ducking, rolling, shooting. A blade cut across his side. But he kept going. At the top of the hill, Jack reached the old generator. He ripped off the cover and began hot wiring it, his hands shaking, sparks flying behind him. The shock units advanced, blades raised inside the shelter. Alarms blared. Sierra looked at Nari. "We have to go." "No," Nari said, tears in her eyes. He said to wait. Sierra stood and grabbed her daughter. Running for the back tunnel, Jack finished the connection and activated the overload. Lights turned red, the ground trembled. He looked back one last time, then smiled. "Come on," he whispered. "Follow me." He dove into a trench just as the entire hill exploded. A wave of fire and earth ripped through the forest, crushing the enemy below it. Silence followed. Heavy and still, Reeves' voice came through the comm. "Jack. Jack, do you copy?" No answer. Sierra and Nari emerged from the tunnel, staring at the smoke rising above the hill. "No," Nari whispered, tears running down her face. He was supposed to come back, but then a figure stumbled from the edge of the crater, covered in dirt and blood, limping, but alive. It was Jack. Nari screamed in joy and ran to him, throwing her arms around him. Sierra followed, tears in her eyes. "You crazy human," she said. "You're alive." Jack smiled, barely standing. "I told you," he said. "We finished this on our terms." The battle was over, but a new path was beginning.